Hi, everyone. Welcome to Autism Virtually's interview team, Jillian, and she's at the top with me, Corey, and we are interviewing Linda. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you can see it. Linda is the author of 1 in 10,000 For the Love of Lee, A Mother's Story. And the story is about her and her son and her family's journey from diagnosis back when only 1 in 10,000 people apparently had autism, which is only in the 70s. It's mind blowing. It doesn't seem that very long ago. And we're so excited to have you and to share your book with us, Linda. Thank you so much. I'm a mother of a 22-year-old autistic young man. And so I read the book. It was really, I could really relate to so much of what you wrote because, I don't know if our kids really get what it's like to be us, or if we really get what it's like to be our kids. Like there is definitely a disconnect there. But being able to read something that is so like, yes, oh, I totally can relate to that feeling. Made me feel like not alone. And I'm so glad you wrote this book. When your second son, Lee, was diagnosed with autism, it was 1976. I'd been born the year before. And the name of your book is 1 in 10,000, which, like I mentioned, was a statistic at the time he was diagnosed. But can you share with us why you chose that particular phrase as a title of your memoir? And also just, were there any other working titles at the time?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about my book. Um, when I decided to write the book, it was in 2015, and a friend of mine had said, on the telephone, I never really told her exactly what I was dealing with. Back in the day, it was so unusual for having to have a child with autism that I really kind of didn't tell a lot of people what I was dealing with. It wasn't like now that I'm an open book pretty much in regards to how I was dealing with it. And she just said after Lee made a change in his life back in 2014, that winter, my friend said, "You should write a book." And I said, and I kind of brushed her off. I said, "Oh, come on." She said, "No, really, you've been a pioneer through this. What you've dealt with," and this was only her knowing some of the things that I dealt with. And she said, "I just feel that you have something to say." And I thought about it and thought about it, talked it over with my husband. And I thought, well, if nothing else, I want to write it for my grandchildren to understand what their Uncle Lee and what their dads went through back in the day when he was 1 in 10,000. But the more I wrote about it, the more I felt that I needed to share this with more people. And when I started writing, I waited and I remember going out on my patio and started to write it. And the first thing that came to my mind was the title. It's like it was just inside of me that I wanted to call it 1 in 10,000 For the Love of Lee, A Mother's Story, because I know that Lee can't speak for himself. And I never really thought about another title. Uh, just like all my stories in the book came out of my mind that were pent up in there for all those years, the title came out like that also. And, in hindsight, maybe I could have chosen a different word because a lot of people, when they look at the book, I thought they would understand that the symbol, the autistic symbol, would be enough to draw them in. But if you don't know someone with autism, you don't know that symbol, and then you also don't know what 1 in 10,000 means. So maybe I should have somehow said something more clear in the title, but it was just what came to my mind when I decided to write this book. It was, like I said, it was the first thing on the paper.
I think it's a great title, and it also since we have different statistics today, it's a historical piece of the story. I was really moved reading it too. I had a lot of empathy for what you experienced as Lee's mom and your whole family. and and I did get thinking too occasionally, like, oh, I wonder if this is how my mom has felt when I've done this or that thing. And I think that for me, that's been a great piece of learning for me, um, in how I can be a better human and interact with her better. I I have some questions, and I might just read them. The parts about trying to find the psychiatrist, other doctors who understood autism at all, and then would accept Lee's insurance. Those It's like such a universal problem. Even today, like, we think just having insurance means that we will get the best care, but not necessarily. And I don't have a particular question, but I just wanted to bring it up. And even today, that I've been told, for other mental health reasons, to find a psychiatrist. And in my gender transition, I needed to as well. And it was very, very difficult. So I related to that in a couple different ways. Like, it's not any easier. Um,
I'm sure, and I can empathize with what you deal with trying to find someone. When Lee was having his problems, like in the book it says, the doctors just kind of brushed me off and really weren't back then tuned in. At least the general practitioners, the pediatricians that I dealt with, and I dealt with a practice. There were at least 5 doctors in that practice, and I did constantly. Our children were required to make the rounds with different doctors. We couldn't just pick one. But even when he did get the diagnosis from the doctor that told us to institutionalize him, that doctor like had no understanding of what a mother, a parent, was going through at the time. And to me, he was just so cruel, and how he just flippantly told us to put him in an institution, that he had a list of he knew some in Philadelphia that he could recommend. And then when he saw me again, when I was expecting my 3rd child, how he was just so cruel again. And this was supposed to be a doctor that was supposed to help you mentally, where he was destroying me without my resilience of staying with it. I could have, and I did have a lot of bouts with depression when I came home, until my son was born, my 3rd child was born, that I realized that he was okay. Um, but yeah, I mean, I understand that, and I do think a lot of it is, um, if we're on a different kind of an insurance plan that doesn't, like my son is on Medicare, Medicaid, and um, medical assistance, they don't want to take it because it doesn't pay enough for them to take it. They want a more lucrative insurance that's going to pay. And yeah, so I can understand that it's still difficult, but I was very blessed to find a doctor, and it's only been since 2014 that I found her, 9 years ago. But she is really very, very excellent. So I feel very good and blessed about that.
I wanted to just ask while we're talking about this, or to bring up, like Corey said, one of the things at the time, like you said, this guy had no clue. And we know that now. And we're still working on autistic research and whatnot. We're still in its infancy. There's so much more we can know. But one of the main beliefs at the time was that the mother was at fault for the child's autism. So, and it was how you explained, like, you didn't show the child enough love. It was in your parenting style. You needed to love your child the correct way so your child wouldn't be autistic. We know now how ridiculous that is. But you also mentioned how even though you knew you loved your son, it filled you with doubt. And I can't imagine how awful that must have been because, let's talk about my son is 22 now. So 6, he was diagnosed. So that was, anybody here good at math? 16 years ago, right? My son is upstairs, sadly, or he could have knocked that right out for me. 16 years ago versus what, 40 some years ago, right? And my psychiatrist who saw my son was kind of not as horrible as yours, but he said, okay, yes, your son has autism. Lower your expectations for what he can do in life. See ya. I can't imagine that was like enough to make me fall apart and break me. I can't imagine if he would have said, oh yeah, and also you need to love your child because your parenting style is the reason why he's autistic. Do you feel how did that affect you? Have you grown past that? And do you feel that that is something that still like lingers, that the parent is somehow at fault, whether it be in the medical field or in the public's opinion? Like, what are your thoughts on that today?
Well, for me, I was raised in a very loving family with my parents and my brothers, and I knew, I mean, I if given the chance, I would have had more children. I knew that loving my son was not the reason that I knew my own value. I knew that I wasn't causing this, but I also realized that maybe I was doing something else wrong. Like I said, you know, I wasn't as careful with my diet when I was pregnant with Lee. When he was an infant, I didn't know what eye contact meant. Like how bizarre. You must understand for me not to be able, I thought, I guess he was looking past me, but I thought he was looking at me. Things like that, that kind of guilt played on me and my mind for a long time. But I knew deep down in my heart and my ability that I've never been ever accused of not being loving. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth in so many aspects of my life. But I did think that there was something I did wrong in some way to cause this. And I got over it. I just knew that I had more important things to worry about than to worry about my own guilt. And I knew that I had to press forward. I knew that I had to, since there was no one else around to tell me what to do. You read how close I was to my mother, but my mother wasn't able to go out and investigate with me. I basically was on my own. My husband was working so hard trying to pay the bills because insurance was a nothing for autism. It wasn't until much later in the late 80s that insurance was diagnosed as a disability, and then it was covered by some things but not all. So I felt very alone in my quest, but I also had 2 other sons that were not on having those issues. I mean, they have little areas in their lives that they say, they joke about it now, which sounds funny, but they'll say, my one son remembers like all emails that he gets, things like that, really unusual. And they'll say, Mom, we didn't get it all. You know, now later in life, they joke around. But I think for them, when I had the 3 of them, they never ever complained about the time that I spent with Lee, whether it was his therapy or taking him to appointments. I, in retrospect, looking back on our lives, I really do believe that they thought, therefore, but the grace of God go I, and they were just so thankful that I spent so much time with their brother because they could see that the love was there. That it wasn't because I get emotional. They knew that the love was there, and that's all we were banking on, was that we were persevering, showing love, and doing whatever we had to do to help him with the tools that we had at the time. I hope I didn't go off question. Okay.
I think you stayed right on topic. It was
Okay.
I like that. It was very nice.
Thank you.
So I do want to know if your son was diagnosed today, do you think it would have changed the reaction you had to finding out he was autistic?
Well, I probably still would have been not sad, but challenged. But with what I found out just recently, since I wrote the book, I was invited to my local elementary school, for example, and they have a whole wing in the elementary school, actually almost a whole floor of children uh, that are they're working with the children that are on the spectrum. And when I went into those classrooms and saw what they're doing now with these children, I mean, they are, rather than, how one of you referred to throwing things up at the wall to see what would stick, rather than us doing that and winging it, they have proven methods of education now that they know what works because of maybe my son being an example back in the day coming through the ranks there. But I'm just so pleased that there is so much interest. I felt when I thought about your question, I thought about that. And to me, have you ever heard of the word an orphan disease? Like with people that have cancer and have leukemia and have like multiple sclerosis, there's such an amount of money that's funneled into those disabilities and research and diseases. But the ones that aren't nearly as prominent, like a disease that has less than 5,000 people in the world, those are called like an orphan disease. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology. But to me, autism back in the day was that orphan disability. It wasn't getting any kind of money and research and people that were working to help find the cause or the help that people needed. But now, because of people like your website, your Facebook page, and um, all the different children that are being diagnosed, there is money coming into the system. So it's not an orphan disability anymore. So I feel so much better for these new moms and dads and caregivers that are receiving this diagnosis. I feel a lot better about the outcome for their children. Yeah.
Yeah, that is absolutely exciting. I can relate to that. As a mom, generation past, of a younger guy. Like you said, it is interesting to see where things have been. Like I read the book and I get a solid picture of what it was like for you and for your son back then. Your professionals that weren't professional. And then like I think about me when my son was 6, when we started out. When we started out, all the research was based on how to cure autism, which they're finding you can get like figure out someone has autism like in an MRI scan from like a couple weeks old to a couple months old. So now like, okay, so now we're talking about changing an entire brain, the way your brain works, which may never be possible. But now from where I am now, it's awesome. We've got, Autistic Voices getting into research. They're starting to research how to make our children's and adults' lives better. Like, how can we make their lives better instead of how can we cure them? Like, that's where all the money was going in when my son was diagnosed at 6. And now more and more money is going into how can we support autistic people. And it is really awesome to see that change, like that I can even see from 6 to today.
That's great.
It's really, really exciting. Okay, so I'm gonna look for another question. I have like paragraphs. People who listen to this know I My questions are long. I definitely wanted to hit on this because my son is about to graduate from college, and employment is such a big issue. You wrote a whole chapter on it. For example, you mentioned for your son, some of the difficult jobs he had, and it had to do with the people versus a job. There is a recent study that came out that shows that autistic people are actually 140% better and more productive at a job they're given than neurotypicals because of the gifts that they have. But only 15% have jobs, and that's we're even talking part-time jobs. I know this one amazing young man who works just a couple days at one job and maybe a couple days at the other, but he's so smart. He should be like making a lot of money, like doing a job where he's working all the time. But it's hard for them to find jobs like based on what he's really great at. Back then you said, there was the grocery store job, the people weren't great. There was a Boscov job, the people were awesome, and he loved it, and he bloomed, right? It was the people that made him bloom.
Yeah.
So there was one story you wrote about how you had thought he was going to be picked up by his helper on Martin Luther King Day, was it? It was one of those like odd holidays we don't think of as a holiday. Right. It was very cold, and your son ended up standing outside the store for 4 hours in the blistering cold, and no one helped him. And it wasn't until 4 hours later that you or hey, can you bring Lee back? And he's like, I don't have Lee. And you're like, oh my gosh. One of the things my son mentioned even today is that he feels, and perhaps Jillian or Corey could comment on this, but he feels like he's invisible in the world. People, like, he exists, but people don't really interact with him. They kind of just ignore him. And I wonder, like, if my son had been in that situation. Now, he's in college, but he would have stood out for 4 hours. Like, that would have been him. Like, he wouldn't have thought, right, I should go in where his farm. He would have been like, nope, my mom told me to wait out here for my ride. And he's very like, he'll follow a direction, and he's one thing, right? Would anybody have helped him like today, like 50 years later, or whatever? And it's heartbreaking. And I wanted to ask you, do you have any thoughts about why you think that this particular thing, like, there's been great understanding, bounds, but with employment, it doesn't seem like we've gotten very far between my son and your son?
I'd like to think that we're coming further, but so many people have such narrow views that are just living in their own worlds and don't want to get involved. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved. Maybe he didn't look like someone that they felt comfortable going up to. Maybe there was a reason. I'd like to think that we're getting to a better place because of people are learning more about people that don't look the same and don't act the same as maybe you or I or them. But I honestly, that's the most important when you're talking about working. That is more than the task that Lee has to do. The environment and who he works with is more important to us now. We've been down that road. We've been down that road twice. And I don't want to go down it again because I want to make sure, and for Lee, with employment, he needs customized employment. He can't multitask like most people. He can't answer the phone. He can't, turn on the computer and look for something. He needs to have a customized work environment. So that's a challenge for a lot of people, especially that are, I don't know how to word it, but that are more on the upper level of autism, as far as their disability, like the level 2 or 3, they can't do what maybe some others can. And so that's where it's really difficult, trying to find those areas and those employers and the people in those companies that are willing to work with someone. his work ethic is amazing. It's better than mine. I mean, I would socialize. I'd go in there and make small talk with my fellow employees, whereas Lee is just geared to, show me the work. I will do the work until it is done. I will not stop. And that's how devoted he is to what is put in front of him. But as far as someone helping him, I could picture that still happening.
Yeah.
On a cold day, I could picture that still happening.
Yeah, I could too.
So
Yeah.
Jillian has something to say, but can I add one thing? Because then we can like put this to bed. What you're talking about, Linda, is called monotropism. And it is true that autistic, your Lee, like Lee, which is one task. Like you have one task to do, and if you're asked to do another thing, it just overwhelms you. My son would be a level 1, and he has the same brain and the same mind. And also, Jillian, when you do come in, do you also have that? I think that might just be like a marker of anybody with autism, which makes it really hard because your son and my son are so different, but they're also very alike. They just present differently,
Yeah.
And I think Jillian also, in a lot of ways, is like your son. But I just wanted to mention that because I found that's something I learned and I found really interesting. I'm sorry, Jill, go ahead.
So, that has not changed where, it's just like, hey, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do my job and take care of your kid. I have this girl who was in school with me, and I don't know if she was autistic or not. I didn't care at all. She didn't bother telling me, I didn't ask. But basically, she was walked to class because she was absolutely horrendously bullied for no other reason than she was awkward. The woman wouldn't show up at all. She just not show up for days and then all of a sudden show up when she, you get in trouble or something. When she get in trouble. I was sitting there and I'd usually end up late to my classes because she couldn't remember where her classes were, so I'd walk her to all her classes.
See?
Which wasn't just screwing her over, it was also screwing me over in that way because now I'm showing up, even if it's just by a little, usually late to class. I did have fairly understanding teachers at the time, so I didn't get in any trouble. I finished my work and they were like, yeah, you showed up a little late, that's fine.
Jillian, that reminds me of myself too. That's exactly the kind of thing I would do, like help others, even though I should be concentrating on myself and that I might get in trouble, but it was more important to help someone else. I had something to say about I learned when I was little, well, I'm a Leo and I like to perform. So I think that's probably in my wheelhouse of if I need help, then I can just put on a hat of I'm just gonna perform and ask somebody to help me do something. Because I don't think there probably was this amount of time where I would have stayed outside, but today I would at least go inside. or no, or look and see, okay, I can I'm sort of thinking while I'm talking. I do somewhat still do that in as much as like I would say, okay, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes to do something of my own, and then I'll go back and wait. So it's sort of an adaptation of it. We've been kind of on some very serious topics here, so I'm going to change it up and ask a question about music, because I loved the part about Lee learning the guitar, and I loved the story about how you were going to learn it with him.
Yeah.
And then he just took off and you stepped back. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah.
And I wondered, like, are you and your husband musical? Are your other boys musical?
Not at all. We had no idea. The only reason we started guitar was for him was that someone had said that music would, and I knew he loved music. And he would listen like to back in the day, the Sesame Street and John Denver and some of those songs over and over before he even started taking guitar lessons. So um, he we wanted to have him. We didn't know maybe this would be an area that he would excel. And I'm just, I can't believe how difficult learning an instrument is. My grandson is learning two different instruments, you know, because I tried it. I am not musical. I never really did anything musically. And so when we had to figure out, where to put your fingers on the chords and the frets and read the music and sing along, and it was just overwhelming to me. I really could not do it. And so I realized how wonderful it was, and he enjoyed it. But he never, he only thought, he like compartmentalized it, that he thought the only time that he works with the computer is when his friend Cindy Long is here to take him through the, if I would say, Lee, get your guitar out, play me, he wouldn't. And we had all these opportunities where we thought, excuse me, that he could play at his workshop, and he could play at his school, or he could play, for family gatherings. I thought it would have been wonderful because he really was quite good. But now he does not play at all. He put it away, and when he moved to the group home, we tried to have him, keep a lesson going, and that kind of fell by the wayside. And he ended up giving his guitar to his nephew to learn how to play the guitar. So, but it was a wonderful. I mean, he did it for I think I said 20, 25 years. That this woman came to our house weekly, except in the summer, and it was just wonderful listening to all these songs as I was making dinner. It was just wonderful that I got to enjoy it. My private concert.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, but no, he had the gift, and he still loves music. We take him to as many musicals around town, like high school musicals and concerts that we know that he'll like that were the John Denver lookalikes that are out there. We'll go to those things, and yeah, so we know that that's an area that he really enjoys.
That's so sweet.
But I admire you that you can do that because I could not.
My well, my parents are both music teachers, so it was kind of in my blood. But I I feel the same. I've tried to play guitar, and it's really difficult, and your fingers are going different
Yes.
directions. But yet I can just pick up the violin and play. If somebody says, "Oh, can you play me this song?" I can probably figure it out right away.
Oh my gosh.
I just thought that was normal.
No, no, it's not normal. That's great. That's a gift. That's a gift.
It's real fun though.
That's great.
Jillian or Jen, did you have another question?
So I do have one that I'm about to ask, but I do want to know, did you ever watch Hamilton?
I did watch Hamilton. It's fabulous. I can't imagine. I know someone who went to see it on Broadway, and it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, it was wonderful.
So my actually, scheduled question then, if you could add anything to your book, what would you add?
Well, I thought about that because of your wonderful question last night. Um, and I did think about this before. The reason that my book wasn't picked up by a publisher was because they wanted, most of the publishers that I checked with wanted something that a parent could pick up and learn something from, as far as what would be pertinent information of where they should go and what they should do. And being that I wasn't at all familiar with what's out there for families to do to go for help now. That was an area that my book was lacking. I only knew what my story was, and that's what I wanted to get out there. But as far as being able to help other people, I knew that I could help them in ways of encouragement and experience, and how faith and love had such an impact on our lives with Lee. But I couldn't give them any concrete information as to what therapy or what behavior modification or whatever you want to call it would help them at the moment. And so that's how I ended up publishing my book by myself, self-publishing, um, through Book Baby. That's how I went about that, because it it, it was just wasn't gonna be picked up by, and that was even from a publisher that publishes autism books. And I thought for sure that they would want to have the history and of where we've come over the years, but they were looking more for more concrete information for families.
See my mad face? That really upsets me, because you know what? I could get Autism for Dummies or Lots Behavioralist. Like there are so many books out there that I could easily get. Okay. To suggest that your book is not helpful to other parents is ridiculous. And it makes me so mad, because you think, right? You think, hey, we've come so far. And then, no, we haven't. Like, there's just hit that door, like your book really helped me, because it made me thankful for as hard as my journey has been. And for all the struggles we've had, like, thank God you came before me, to break the way easier for me. It made me feel not alone. It made me be appreciative for things that maybe I didn't appreciate before, such as the fact that I've never had to worry about how am I going to pay for my son to get the therapies he needs or to see the therapists that he needs to see. That's never been, and thank God, because I was a single mom, poor, widowed, when my son was 2. I can't imagine like what it would have been like if my son had been born at the time your son was. So that, I just want to say, that makes me so angry that a publisher, especially as you said, a publisher who does autism books about autism, would be so out of touch, because that makes no sense to me as someone who read your book. And I feel that even, Corey got a lot out of the book. Jillian said that she got a lot out of the book. And I just want to let you know that I am so mad for you that you had to deal with that. And I don't know, I hope that like J.K. Rowling, where all the issues with that person, well, let's not even go there. But the only reason I bring that person up is that, they had to try to get their book published. How many times? Harry Potter is huge. Oh my gosh. J.K. Rowling should love autistic people. And so should the Pokemon guy who created that, because they're like their base fan base, But just, I encourage you to keep trying, because I found your book to be incredibly helpful. I actually know an author, Scotty McCoy. He's an admin on our group, who does have a publisher. So maybe I can get you two guys connected and see if we can make something happen, because I feel that your book should be read. I feel your book is incredibly helpful. I'm done ranting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a grassroots effort. I mean, I'm just meeting people like you and getting an interview, which I was very excited about. Local libraries and churches, and it's just kind of a grassroots kind of thing. I'm hoping, that at some point it will get to somebody that can get it out there more. But at this point, and like my youngest son said to me, Mom, you should be just so thankful that you got your story out. You reconnected with, and I reconnected with so many people. I'm meeting so many people just like you three. And he said, just be thankful for the moment that you're in. I never came into this thinking I was going to have a bestseller or anything like that. I just was, when I started, compelled to um, not sugarcoat what our life was like and not just have it all happy and, pleasantries and everything. I really bared my soul in that book. And that's why my hair's gray. I let my color grow out. Figure if I bare my soul, I might as well bare my hair. But so I am thankful that I did it and I am pleased with where it is, but I would love it to go because I just feel that people have to understand what families are dealing with. And I feel that my book describes how difficult it is for families that are, whatever your disability is, how hard it is for a family to keep it all together, to do their best and get their child to live their best life. And that's all I ever wanted for Lee, and I feel right now he is living his best life. We're once again looking for another job. We thought he had the forever kind of job for himself. That company moved out of our area, and so they closed down the plant where he worked. And so now we're back looking for job coaches and people to understand what his capabilities are. And that's a difficult road for a lot of people with autism, trying to get the help that they need to find the job. We talked about it a bit. So yeah, but yeah, so I'm just thankful. I mean, Book Baby has been wonderful to work with as far as helping me get the story out, uh, and to have it done with good editing and so I'm pleased with where it is, but I would like it to get to more hands that they can read it to more caregivers.
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading it. Oh, lost my train of thought. Jillian, did you have something you wanted to say? Then I'll remember what I was going to say.
So I actually, first of all, Jennifer, you leave my Pokemon cards alone. Second of all, I actually ended up talking to my mom after reading. I didn't get to read the whole book, but I was reading I was reading it. It was interesting. It's definitely a perspective I didn't hear before. And I took and was asking my mom, and she's like, yeah, no, I just didn't. Basically, she didn't. She was like, yep, this is how this is. All right, let's go. I have an autistic child. Who cares? So, um, it was interesting to see how, I guess, time periods took and I don't want to say change the perspective, but influence the perspective of different people. Even though she didn't know much about autism, there was still information out there that she had easy access to, so she knew she wasn't gonna be stranded, which made it
Right.
comfortable for her to
Mm.
I don't comfortable for her to it made her more comfortable in the idea of raising me, I guess. Like, yeah, I can do this. This isn't gonna be anything too bad. I can do this, no problem.
That's actually what I was gonna say is that I think your book is a testament to the power of mothers and families on the whole, and your resilience, not only Lee's but yours, and just the persistence. I know some of what Jenn's gone through. And Jillian, I think your mom that's kind of how she approaches life, jumps in and is gonna do what she can And it sounds like that's what you've done too, Linda. One of my questions was about this, like Jenn, I was getting so angry at some of the parts, you know, the suggestion that your son had to go to an institution, um, the same person questioning whether you should have had more kids, the blame that you had about, you know, as a mother, whether you'd done something, the false hopes that you had from doctors. And I wondered, like, do you still have anger about it? I have a feeling I know the answer to this, but I wanted to hear from you. I have a feeling it might have to do with your faith. Um, and how have you kind of dealt with that part of it?
Um, yeah, I first of all don't have any malice towards anybody in who tried. I think, quite honestly, I think the people that worked with me were only a product of their knowledge of what they had. Maybe how they conveyed it to me could have been in a lighter tone. But in hindsight, as I'm reading more about autism and families and listening to, or, reading on your um, Facebook page what other families are dealing, when he said that to me, as cruel as it was, I do know of other people now that have children, more than one child with autism. That is how he knew that. I have no idea, because that was 46 years ago. How he had, so whether those children might have been in the institution at the time, that he could tell, that he knew that back then. I don't know, but I don't harbor any bad feelings for any of them. And I just knew that I was given this task back then to raise these three children, and I knew that I was going to do my best. And my faith has driven me so far. And like I say, it doesn't need to be faith in God. It can just be meditation, or whoever can help you come together with your thoughts and in your mind. So yeah, I don't harbor any bad feelings to any of these people. I think they were just doing the best that they could with what they had.
You are like an angel on earth. I am not as good of a person as you. But you're right, like holding anger doesn't help. But before I do my last question, which is actually a series of topics that we can just all touch base on in our different viewpoints right now. If you don't mind, I'll share a personal story about the man who diagnosed my son. I told you, he just very coldly told me to lower my expectations, and that was it. And see ya. And I never really I was angry at him for years. I was in the car. I remember my son was just being my son, and I was ugly crying at the front of the car, quietly as I could.
I can relate.
And thinking, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? And then I'm thinking, okay, this is a kid that put like 1,000-piece puzzles together when he was 3. He taught himself to read between he was 3 and 4. Like, it was one of his passions. Like, he had to be able, how do you do that, Mom? Is it magic? Wow, somebody else can say the same thing. I must understand. He was just so bright. And there was this commercial, and you're maybe close enough. I don't know if you had Boyer's stores anywhere near you, but they have this commercial, and my son's been singing it like at the end, like since he was 2. And the jingle is Boyer's makes you feel so good. So I'm ugly crying, right? And I'm having all these thoughts, and the commercial comes on, and he sings the song all happy. And I thought, you know what? Screw that. And I've always questioned myself too, like if that was the right choice at the time. Because as my son grew up, I didn't let him, but I encouraged him to believe he could be anything he wanted to be. He was smart and talented, and the sky was the limit. And as like he got older and he struggled with all of the responsibilities of school, there were 2 times he attempted suicide. I always question myself, did I make the right call? It's very complicated when you're a mom. And when your book is great in the way that it really made me, it really touched me in that way. And to suggest that your book isn't helpful to other parents is absolutely ridiculous. But I had the chance to go back to see this guy, which is the whole point of the story. Sorry.
Oh,
Short thing. So my son has anxiety disorder, right? So went to anxiety clinic, as many of our guys do. And he was the psychiatrist. So at the time my son was playing Shrek, he finally got like the lead role in a big musical and he was really excited about it. They'd written an article about him that I've shared recently. My friends list ought to know this article. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take this and I'm going to show him. And I gave him a copy and I said, listen, I don't know if you remember me, because my son was, I think, 17 at the time. So it was 11 years. I said, you know, but I remember you. I remember you telling me my son was autistic. And I remember you telling me to lower my expectations for him. And I didn't listen to you. And I want you to see what my son was able to accomplish, you know, and read about all the awesome stuff he did. And I want you to think about, like, if you're still diagnosing other kids, you know, like, think about what you're saying to them. He refused to keep the book. He said he made a copy of it. I'm not sure if he really did, but it felt so good to be able to go and talk to him. And in that moment, I was able to let go a lot of the anger, you know, but if I didn't have that moment, I'd still be raging. So like I said, you're an angel to be able to let that go without like telling that man exactly what you felt and how he wronged you and how he wronged your family. So you are amazing. Okay, last thing for me, and then Jillian has one last question. So I wanted to go through a list with you because I find it so interesting. The 1 in 10,000, we're now 1 in 44, correct? Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking maybe we could take a couple topics about what has changed, like, and how much you think it's changed. So all of you can go for, so I can hear you all. We'll go around in red and round robin. It'll be me, Linda, Jill, and Corey. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about what we believe has changed, how much it's changed, or if it hasn't changed much at all. Okay. So from when your son was diagnosed, access of diagnosis, Linda.
Well, I think access to diagnosis, when I'm reading some of the posts on your site, I'm seeing, at least even online at other areas, I mean, I only had to wait when I really said that I noticed that Lee was different at a very young age, like when he was an infant, and I have that in the book. And when I got really serious about it, when that woman had asked if he was retarded, that was when he was 2. That was the summer after he turned 2. So it took, it didn't take long for me to get to a doctor and to have the testing. I mean, within a half hour or an hour that they had him back in the playroom before they called my husband and I in to tell us, it all happened within, I would say, three months. So I'm looking at these other people that are waiting, like they're saying, like, my child isn't going to get a diagnosis for another year or for another 8 months or something like that. Unless I'm misunderstanding, it seems like it's taking awfully long for them to get in any kind of a system for them to get the therapy that they need and to get the help and the education that they need. So unless I'm misreading it, I think it's taking them longer to have to wait when they already know that there's something not quite right, as I said in the book, to help their child. So I don't know if I'm right or if I'm misreading it. I'd like to know that.
Yeah, you absolutely make a good point, especially like in some of the other countries, there is a long waiting list. Jill, yes. What do you think?
I think I have the least amount of experience with this because well, just my age in general. I'm 17. I just don't have the firsthand experience of the time
Yeah.
change, but I would hmm,
Do you feel more girls are being diagnosed now, have access to diagnosis, perhaps?
uh I I think so, because some are, but it definitely hasn't. I don't think it's changed that much. You still don't have girls being diagnosed nearly as much as boys. I still hear sometimes that it's a men's issue, or like a male focused issue, and that obviously that's just wrong. I You threw me off with this. I was not
Okay, you're
expecting to,
good. That's okay. But
yeah.
you'll feel good about being able to be brought into some of my other topics. You'll have lots to say. Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, it is like if I wanted to get I'm self-diagnosed, although I've been talking with my therapist about it. But I think you have to be diagnosed by a psychiatrist. So although she can talk to me about it, she can't diagnose me with it. I think that's true. And it's been really hard to get people to believe me in the first place, even though so I and there was like before recently, um there was Asperger's, and there was a test out of Australia, I think, and I thought maybe my ex-husband was was on the spectrum, and so I was like, let's take this for fun. That wasn't really fun, but it's like this 500 question thing, and or however many questions, and I came back with like 179 out of 200, and he had like 35 out of 200, and I was like, wait a minute, this 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 doesn't seem right. What's happening here? You mean it's me? Oh no. um and that was probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It was a while ago, um and I've been telling people, and it's only recently, and then Jenn invited me to come visit her new group, and I just came to learn some things that I didn't know, and I've like it's completely changed my life. And I'm drawn to a lot of people who are on the spectrum, and it's always been that way, and I think that's interesting too. We're sort of like magnets. We just find each other. Um uh I got a little off track, but when I don't know a lot about diagnoses, um except that I've heard that are very similar to yours, Linda, that it was yeah, 1 out of 10,000, very rare. um I've heard other stories about other diagnoses of disabilities that I mean, it's just such a different there's still a stigma today, but it's much less, I think. I hope. And
Yeah.
I share with people that view me as functional, whatever that means. But I share my autism to educate people, because it's not just a one thing. And you can't tell by just looking at somebody. And it's a whole experience. And I'm still learning in what ways that I'll just call it for right now a deficit. Like, oh, this thing that I really have trouble with is probably because of this. Now I can maybe work on it, and I'm hopeful, but I'm curious to see where things are in another 40, 50 years
Really.
Yeah.
for the next
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking about Corey's generation, like it's really amazing that you were able to get that diagnosis, because the diagnosis missed for your son. He was 1 out of 100 kids who actually got the diagnosis. Corey did not. And there are so many in that generation that have to turn to self-diagnosis, because I believe the access of getting a diagnosis as an adult is incredibly hard. If you don't have insurance, there aren't like a ton of people who do it for adults. It is incredibly difficult to get diagnosed as an adult. You have to have the means and the knowledge. There are people that are 60 years old just getting diagnosed, and think, oh, well, that makes so much sense. But wouldn't it be nice to know this when I was much younger about myself? So I feel like in that frame, more girls are being diagnosed, so that's good. They have a different playbook, like what they're looking for different things now. But as Jillian said, we're still missing a lot. But we definitely could. We're definitely better and worse in different ways. It's kind of like seesaw, right? Like it's taking more time, but we're catching more people. And now, and the ones that we didn't catch, we are not making it easy for them to get help that they need. Okay, so next subject, education of the public. Has it improved greatly, or needs a lot of work? Linda.
Well, I think it's improved, definitely. And, it's because of pages like, Facebook groups that have. And I think more people are understanding and realizing that, because like I said, it's getting the funding, it's getting the word is getting out. They have accommodations at places like in the movie theater or in the planetarium or wherever you go. There are some sorts of accommodations for autistic individuals. And so, I mean, that was, unheard of back when I was dealing with Lee. And so, yeah, I feel that there is much, it's getting better. I do agree. I do think it's getting better.
Okay, awesome. Jill?
So can I answer this by like telling a couple different, experiences that I've had?
Absolutely.
So one, when I was growing up, because my sister didn't understand autism because she's 10 years, she's like 9 or 10 years older than me. I don't remember the exact math right now. So she ended up, getting stuck with me quite a bit. And things that I was doing was upsetting her, like, because I wouldn't look her in the eye, especially when I was upset. So she'd be like trying to, I guess, punish me or lecture me or whatever you want to take and go with. I'd also be called selfish or self-centered or some other insult along those lines, and I'd have absolutely no idea what I did. I still don't know what I did. Then, of course, outside of the home, I took and ended up with a guy who took and followed me around school and basically insulted me after he found out that I was autistic. I do still believe it's been getting a lot better. The fact that, a middle schooler knew what autism was is definitely improvement. In a weird sense.
Gotta laugh or cry. Laugh for sure.
For sure.
Heartbreaking.
In a weird sense. I've had quite a few basic scenarios along those lines. I ended up in the hospital for a suicide attempt, and after I got out, one of my big things was basically I didn't feel normal, and I wasn't succeeding in school, and at that time I had basically tied my self-worth to my grades. So if I was failing, then I was a failure. That is really dark. That was really dark. I'm sorry. But still. Yeah, she took and asked me if I was on meds, and then was like, well, then there must be something wrong with your brain then. Right after I took and told her, hey, I am not taking and coping very well with school. I feel like I'm not normal. Yeah, you're not normal. Don't you get that? Sucks to be you. Um, she was basically trying to avoid a lawsuit, which my mom wouldn't have sued her anyways. My mom's too much of a pushover. And basically a bunch of examples along those lines. So yeah, I there's still much of a stigma, but at least there's now a stigma. Enough people know about autism that there there are some interesting views on it, to say the least. I
Seesaw,
hope
right?
I got my I hope I got my
Totally.
point across.
You did. Thank you for sharing that. Corey, what do you think?
What was the question again?
Question is, we're talking education of the public in regards to autism. If it
Oh.
like, from where do you feel it's improved, really improved, or it's wherever it is?
I mean,
Yeah.
I think the internet itself probably helped a lot in the seesaw. Like, what's the actual factual information that we need and want? I think overall it's been good. I mean, it's been good for people who are self-diagnosed, like myself. And really all I wanted to learn was skills so that I could function better out in the world. That's my main goal. But learning like the background stuff, the science, like why is this, has been really, really cool and interesting. And I think that with the fact that we have the science that we can even share with other people is amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. Like I love the insight from all over. So my last insight for this is, like I said, it's funny. I call people angry elf. Like there are certain angry elves, and I'm angry elf about some things. But when you watch your child, like, and adult, teen, whatever, suffer bullying and the person who would never go out of his way to make anyone feel less than who they are. They could tell him that the earth is flat. They completely believe it, and he wouldn't feel the need to correct them, or he'd just be like, okay, like, you be you, like he's so kind, but he has suffered so many times where he has been bullied. One of his things is every year at the school he went to for Autism Awareness Day, which is, I think he thinks is a big joke. Everybody would pay $1 to wear blue, and they still treat him the same way. Or maybe they'd be nice and ignore him and not horrify him that day, but then the next day they go and they horrify him. Like Jill said, when you grow up and everybody knows you're autistic, that just makes you an easy target, in my experience. So, autism awareness definitely has grown, especially like from where Linda was. I can't even imagine the dark ages, you know what I mean, where nobody even knew that word. So it's definitely grown in a lot of ways. But I think what we really need to be focusing on now is autism acceptance. Like, we don't see someone who's autistic and think, oh, good, my life sucks, which I'm sure that kid's life was terrible, Jillian, and he just needed to find someone to hurt as badly as he was hurting. It doesn't put like a target on them. Like, this person is a good person to take out my hate on. But that we actually accept them for who they are, and we understand, how amazing these people are. So I think like a seesaw, definitely autism awareness is way up. Like Jillian said, at least that middle schooler knew what it was. But autism acceptance is pretty far down. It really needs to move up, in my opinion. Okay.
Yeah, can I interject one thing real quick?
Absolutely.
And I think also like amplifying people's strengths is so valuable. And like Lee with the guitar, that's a great activity, or whatever he's doing at work that he is enjoying.
Right.
And work with that instead of putting people down and concentrating on what we can't do.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, for neurotypicals, if everybody like just concentrated on what we were terrible at? I'm terrible at quite a number of things. I mean, it's not like they'd have to look to find. I don't know about you, Linda, but it would take long to find a bunch of things I suck at. But like, if if everybody just cared about what I was terrible at and focused on that, like, would we be like completely different people at this point
Yeah,
in the life? So
there's
what
a
you're
point.
saying makes
There's a point to think about.
absolute sense. I 1000% agree with you, Corey. Okay, next one. Employment of autistic individuals. What do you think, Linda?
Well, I think with all the people that are coming out that from high school, say even a Jillian looking for a job, there's just such a need for more people to work with job coaching, job just to procure a job for someone that isn't comfortable. I know they're working on it. They're working on uh, interview skills, which Lee has really none, as far as being able to really hold an interview. Um, he does so well at a job, but for him to be able to go and get the job and to talk to an employer, that's where he needs the help and people to we have a resume for him because he's gotten a list of areas of employment that he's been really successful at. But I think there really needs to be more. Just like, every place you look, they're hiring for jobs, but for people who don't have the ability to get in the door at those jobs, they need more people that are skilled in that area. So I see a lot of need in that area. I see it, like I said, I see a lot of um, employees to be compassionate with people that are just a little different from them, not uh, their group, aligned to their group or whatever, and to be understanding. I just see, more funding is needed for through OVR, whatever agency. We're involved in OVR. We're involved in with our supports coordinator, and I don't know if everyone that has like Jillian, does she have a supports coordinator, like a social worker that she works with to help her transfer from high school to adulthood, and to be out in the world? You know, that's where I see the need for helping, like you were saying, helping these people that are autistic make their way into the world. I just feel that that's really, we talk about even living situations. There's such a waiting list for people who, with parents that are getting older, that can't take care of them any longer. There might be independent living for your son, um, Jenn, somewhere down the road. But for someone that needs some more care, they're just hard to come by and quality ones to come by. So I just see that there's such a need for social services for the total population.
Yeah, definitely agree. Good points. Jillian, what do you have to add to this conversation?
So we're talking about work in particular. Okay.
Getting a job. Yep, keeping the job. Like people are supportive at your job. Job.
I have tried very hard to get a job. I have not gotten one yet. I have seriously applied to just about every place that I can legally work that is at least semi-decently close. I've found it pretty hard to find a job I have had one interview, and that was actually my mom, because she is fairly well known around here for her desserts that she makes. And it was a dessert themed place. So she was like, "Hey, do you have any job openings?"
Right.
And lo and behold, they're looking for someone, but they want someone who's 18. So I did not get the job. It was the only interview I've had. Um, this is all to say, basically, I don't know much about the job market, and the job market in particular with neurodivergent and autistic people. I have heard that can be very difficult to work in a typical 9 to 5, because the environment can tend to be louder or overwhelming for quite a few people. Even if they're good at their job, it can be difficult to find a job that they'll be good at, per se, if that makes sense. That's my very wish-washy opinion on it, I guess, in this
It's
question.
good.
So I'm just
Last
curious,
engineer.
Jillian, do you have someone that is a sports coordinator or a social worker that works with you?
No,
You don't have an IEP?
I have a 504, that's about it.
Okay. Because there should be something, like, I think if you would, yeah, and see, that's where the disconnect is that I feel right now. Your schooling gets you to a point, but you really don't want to sit at home once you graduate from high school and not have anything to keep your mind and that beautiful artwork going. Um, and so there should be some kind of an agency that can help you navigate, because it is complicated. Just getting a resume together, that should be even a class that maybe would be able to help you when you're still in school.
They actually did have a class in particular, and it was a math credit I got for it. I didn't exactly get to cover. Oh, we did. We put together resumes.
Mhm.
We didn't go over in detail, but I think I got pretty lucky, at least with my school, when it came to that, because I know a lot of places don't have that.
No, that's good. And I'm glad you feel that way. But, I just feel that that's so important now as they're sending you out into the world, that you have some place that you can get help to move on so that you feel your value.
Yeah, we just talked about there was a workshop about, or a chat about IEPs last weekend. Was it last weekend?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that was so interesting, and they mentioned OVR, which in New York State it's Access VR, which I've worked with them a little bit myself. So that, I think, Jillian, that might be one of your good options. Yeah, so my job history is I've done pretty well at jobs, but sometimes the I think it was before we started recording, we were talking about how I would empathize with people and want to advocate for them. I don't know, too much. And that's something that I worked at a residential house, and I felt very empathetic with the people who lived there and really wanted them to have more resources than they were getting. Really, like, we would have a new roommate come in, and then I would ask, like, well, they're not really getting along, how do we facilitate this? And there was like nothing to support it, and after so many of those kind of interactions, it was so frustrating for me to watch, as a staff person, to have nothing. I mean, I would go and read on my own, but I can only do so much. And so I would end up just getting so frustrated and burnt out because I didn't know how to be more helpful and successful, and then it would kind of undermine my confidence with the rest of my work. And it's so I'm trying to figure out, I'm in school right now, but I'm trying to figure out what kind of business I can start myself, because I think that's going to be my best bet, but I'm going to need help still
Sure.
to do the rest of the, either the accounting or, you know, some of that stuff. It would be pretty awesome if I could make a business that would help other people on the spectrum too, have jobs that would amplify their gifts. I don't know how that would work, but if anybody has any ideas, get back to me.
Okay.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're talking, excuse me, I'm just so into like what you were saying. We're talking about employment, yes. Okay, so interesting thing is, you know, like, okay, my son, he's a senior and he's gonna graduate. Absolutely, right? But it's been really hard for him. It's been like, you know, have you ever seen Sylvester Stallone in those boxing things, you know, and at the end of the fight he's like, and he looks horrible. Like that is what my looks like at the end of every semester, but like he's still standing, you know. It's just been brutal. It's been so hard. So I worry about, you know, him being able to go out there and to interview well. Interviews, I feel, are probably one of the biggest things that people are doing wrong for people like my son and like Corey and like Jillian. Is, you notice, like when we give an interview, I have everybody like come up with their questions so that there's no surprises. We all know what to expect. And we can prepare our answers, right?
Right.
Problem with interviews is it's all cold questions, which autistic people usually don't do well with. Already they're stressed about being in a new place, their smells, sensory stuff going on. They don't know this person. They're trying to figure out, hey, does this person like me? Do I have a chance? Am I wasting my time? Because a lot of life experience may have shown them that this is an exercise in futility. But I really feel that if we did the employment, you know, the interview process differently, if instead, you know, we gave them a piece of paper, like with the questions I'm going to be asking beforehand, so you can have the time to collect your thoughts, you know, I think that would help a lot. But I do worry, you know, interesting too, you're talking about independent living. Well, my son is not going to get Social Security disability. He's going to be told he's too smart. They're gonna be like, dude, you just you went to college, you got a degree in physics and 2 minors, and you want, and I'm gonna put you on, and you can't get a job. Like seriously. So he, like a lot of people, autistic people, like on the spectrum where he is, unfortunately, a lot of them become homeless if they don't have families. I've seen autistic homeless people, and it is not only heartbreaking,
It is.
but like for me, that's my fear. You know, your fear is, you know, the residential home that Corey's talking about, like, you know, that your son would be somewhere like that. But we each have our own fears, and our kids and our adults have so many gifts. Like Jill's so gifted, Corey's so gifted. It shouldn't be a battle, you know, to be able for them to get a job. So I feel like we've not really come, you know, very far, because you've got that, you know, getting a job still is really hard. And if you get the job, 80% of the time you're bullied by other coworkers, which, you know, undermines your ability to do that job. And only like half of the people who ask for help get it. So we really need to work on those numbers. I'm loving this whole idea. Like we're talking about this. I'm like loving listening to you.
You're the first person we've tried this out with.
No, but this is really great. This is going to be such a long interview, but okay, so we're gonna go backwards a little bit. I missed this one, and this is like my baby. Like if I could pick one thing, Access to education. Is it same, improved a lot, seesaw, kind of? What do you think, Linda?
Oh, well, like I said, when when Lee was in school, he had teachers that were trying to do the best that they could do. Um, and then in sixth grade, he got into a totally inappropriate classroom for the whole year in sixth grade because everyone that he was with, you know, aged out of the elementary school and had to go to the junior high, and he was still stuck in this class for emotionally disturbed with a teacher that just had such a poor work ethic. But like I said, with education now, I'm seeing what is available. At least I saw what was available at the elementary level, and then they said that they were moving it to the middle school, and like as these children were aging out of elementary, and then on to the high school setting. So in my district, I live in the Conrad Weiser School District. Um, I feel confident in the education system by what I've seen and what I hear about. So I just feel more hopeful for the families that have children that are, dealing with this disability.
Greatly improved. All right, awesome.
Yeah, I
Jillian.
do.
Jillian's living it. What do you think?
It's I think it's so education is like one of those things that varies so much from place to place. That like I took and ended up with a really good health education. I took it, but then I hear full-grown adults talk about this is just an example of like how much the education system varies. Full-grown adults talk about things that is totally inaccurate for high school biology, and they're all over the. So I think there's a big disconnect with the fact that education varies so much from place to place, even within the same school district, from religious schools to public schools to private schools. And it's interesting to think about your zip code taking and telling you how much education or what kind of education you'll be receiving.
True.
Which also makes it very hard to judge things like the education for disabled people in general, because just like every other thing, it varies. I know that I took in, due to the No Kids Left Behind, where you get pushed through. I was in fifth grade reading at a second grade level. I knew nothing about any of the multiplications. I, beyond just having terrible social skills due to the how autism affects communication, I also ended up getting pretty stunted with the fact that I ended up spending a lot of my younger years in a room doing homework because my mom had no idea how to help me when it came to that. So where all the kids were playing at recess, I was in a room with the lights turned off with one teacher. Which I am still gonna say that just from what I've read, or heard about, the education system was, I still ended up in speech therapy, which helped a lot because I used to have a horrible stutter. I still stutter quite a bit. I still ended up in a couple reading classes. This was after elementary, but most of the stuff that I ended up in that was supposed to help me was pretty darn late in my education. It was probably around in middle school that I got a lot of that, which at that it was very frustrating because not only did I take and have the stigma from being put into classes like that, which I definitely heard about from other kids, I also was going from, hey, I've taken and thought I've caught up pretty well. And fifth grade, I had an awesome teacher. He took and literally built a whole profile, a folder on how to take in what was happening to better help the teacher next in 6th grade. So I thought I had caught up a bunch, and it's like, yeah, no, you didn't. I hate to tell you, no, you didn't. Which was interesting. I seriously still do believe the fact that I got into those classes shows how much the education system has come. I still think it has a really, really long way to go before it's gonna get much praise from me. That makes sense.
It does. Thank you. That's really insightful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you had to wait so long till you got the help that you needed. So it's a work in progress, is what you're saying. Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's improved. The school I'm going to now, I'm going online, and they have built into the classes almost all of the accommodations you might need normally. I do have accommodations to give me like a few days extra to turn assignments in. And I'm working on what I might need next, but like getting transcripts if you need to read stuff, I have a computer which will read stuff to me, so if my eyes are tired, I can just listen. Everything is, they kind of give you 3 ways to learn something: visual, a book chapter, video, and then there's the lecture. So there's like all of these different interactive parts. It's frustrating that I'm still struggling in some aspects, but I'm just blown away by how much how different it is from when I first went to college in 94, 95. I'm studying 2 very different things, and I think I was so successful before because I was doing music. So my music classes were things I had studied for a long time. It was playing in a orchestra or string quartet or singing. And those are like the doing things that you're participating. So that's not as study heavy in an area that I wouldn't have been as successful in. So the downfall for me was that because I was very independent and did well in school, I just assumed that I could be independent wherever I went. So I went to college in Kansas, and it's difficult for mom and dad to jump on a plane. And that was really my downfall. I don't need a lot, but I do need them. And I did need, I would call them a lot, but, so having, my therapist, to, like, if I'm struggling in school, maybe it's something she can help me with or figure out. Or is it, some other mental health thing? Just having tools that I didn't have before. I think that's pretty cool. I think when I was in high school, I never heard of IEPs before then. So, and my understanding of them then was like, oh, it's the troubled kids or the kids that needed help, whatever that meant. And now I see it as they're just tools for help, which I think if we could just get that understanding out too, that it's not a reflection on who a person is, it's just help.
Exactly. Good point.
I think we do have ways to go though, and kids can be so cruel. I think the internet bullying is the worst kind of bullying I've ever heard and seen. In a way that's like that people can be anonymous and relentless, and I'm kind of glad I grew up before that, because I don't envy anybody who's I'm an adult. I can handle, for the most part, I can handle that, and or I can I can know to immediately block somebody, but children don't know that. And
Yeah.
I remembered something else I was gonna say that nope, it flew out of my head again.
Okay. Hey, feel free to
I'll
like
remember.
break in anytime when it comes back to you. Just like your finger up will be like, okay, Gordon, take it away.
Look, it's something that I really relate to with my mom, from reading your book, Linda, that I don't think this was it, but it's just another thing. Like my mom recently said that she was just constantly busy taking me places to do activities because I was so bored. And so now as an adult, I'm realizing, oh, I'm getting involved in all of these different volunteer places so that I can keep busy. And then, if it's a lot, then I might have to slow down or take a few weeks off or something. But that really helps me regulate. But for her, it probably was very exhausting. And I'm so lucky and grateful that she was able to do that. And I think that that's it sounds like something that you were able to do for Lee and your other sons.
Yeah.
And just how valuable that is from the other side. I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
Love, I put a love in my comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so like access to education, like, okay, so how to go about this? That's my thing. Like, if I could pick one thing to be my thing and to change, it would be access to higher education for our kids. There are so many parents and amazing parents and advocates already for K to 12 and even pre-K, getting early intervention. But my son went to college through COVID, and he had a set of tools, like Corey was talking about, a set of tools that worked for him in the world. He adapted to the world that these tools helped me be successful. In-person learning, being able to kind of figure out, have my peers next to me in class help me translate into my way of thinking was really helpful for him. Having the teacher with him to access, not having to go work with kids outside of class. It's like, okay, we're working on a project right now and everybody's there, like all of those things really helped him. And when COVID hit, well, then he was just doomed. Some autistic students like did great because it really went into their strengths. Like they might have been really struggling, and then like it was all online and it was like, oh, wow, we're doing awesome. But for my son, it was like the opposite. Like everything just blew up for him. And the teachers, the professors there have been most of them have been really fantastic. And even the ones who haven't been fantastic, it wasn't that they were trying to be fantastic. They just didn't have the knowledge and the understanding on board, because if you are a college professor, there's no trainings on neurodivergent students. There's none. There's no trainings on anything. Yeah, you're like, dude, okay, you've got a master's in physics, and yeah, and it looks like you've got some experience doing it. Okay, you're hired. But they don't have to learn how to work with different types of thinking. And you go to school, you write papers, you hand in your work at the time, and you do things the certain way. And for my son, you know, he was able to kind of hang before COVID, but then COVID hit and he just blew up. So I think access to, you know, education, higher education really needs to change a lot. I know, like, from at least in college, I haven't had a child who went to, you know, the other types of higher learning to see how well maybe kids might do better there, because it's a lot of hands-on stuff. Like, you learn to be a welder, make a lot of money, life's great, but you can touch things, you know, and there aren't such hard due dates, and there's not so much happening at once. And, you know, if one class, none of the teachers in the college talk to each other, so they can really take each other down without realizing it. So I really feel that, at least when it comes to that, I think we have like miles and miles to go. Awesome to hear the Corey thing, that they're doing all 3 types of learning styles. That's really cool.
Yeah,
and that's something I'd like to push, you know,
my
colleges to do more of.
my professors, my degree program, web development, went all online, and they have Zoom meetings, I guess, where they actually do talk to each other, which I thought, I mean, it just seems, I do think it's probably a more nerdy school that attracts a lot of people for the tech industries and creative industry, music, and but the tech end of those, so I think there are a lot of people on the spectrum already who are teachers, which I think helps. Not always, but sometimes.
Cool. All right, two more, because like this is taking forever, but I'm loving it. We have 2 more. I think they're both important to check, and then Jillian's gonna ask her last question. Okay, civil liberties and rights for the autistic community. Is it seesaw, improved greatly, needs to improve? Linda, what do you think? What's your experience?
I'm not quite sure I understand exactly what you mean by the civil liberties.
Okay, we'll go then to Jillian. Jillian, do you understand my question? If not, I can rephrase it.
Are you talking about like
the right to be happy, the right to be successful, you know, like the right to, you know, have the support you need to be successful? You know, like, for example, there's a anti-discrimination laws, which aren't very helpful to the autistic community, because, you know, it takes forever for something like that to come through. And it's just there. For example, if you're in a school, okay, you're autistic, my son's autistic, he's in college, he has the rights to, everybody has the right to, once you have, you know, a diagnosis, you have the right to time and a half on tests, and you have the right to go somewhere quiet to take the test. They have to provide that. I remember when I met the OAR person who no longer works there, I met her twice. I ugly cried both times. She said, well, this is all we legally have to do. Okay, my son now has flexible deadlines, which they don't legally have to do. Okay, they don't have, but they should legally have to do this, because that is what's called, you know, equal and equitable are 2 different things. You know, like, you can't treat all the kids the same with as equals when they're all so different, you know. So right now they don't have the right to have those. Like, for example, Corey has them, but legally they don't have to do that. Legally, that needs to grow. So for me, if I were to answer the question, I would say there needs to be a lot of changes. If you look at the statistics, I know it was horrifying in my last topic post. If you had the heart to get through them, I mean, 85% of autistic people don't have jobs. 75% of autistic people have depression. 66% have depression disorders. They're taking themselves out. What right to happiness when 3 to 6, and you can even go higher depending on how you work those numbers, are attempting suicide and dying by suicide? Like, obviously, you see a community that is in pain and not doing well. You know, and that's my son. Hello, world. He's just graduating. Like, that's the world my son's going out into right now. Civil rights and liberties, are they really being given to our kids and to our adults? I would say no, based on, you know, what the world looks like for them. I would say we have so much more we need to be doing politically, legally, to help them, and morally to help them. Does that help you understand my question? And what I'm talking
I do understand your question, but because of your children being so far out into the world, as opposed to my son and where his world is, we do have to accommodate him with his right to be happy and his right to be heard, his right to voice his opinion. You know, it happens when he doesn't want to go to the gym. When they say, Lee, we're going to go to the gym today, and he'll say, I don't want to go to the gym. They don't take him to the gym. And I'm like, okay, that's all right. But at some point, he has to get to the gym. So maybe if you reword your question, like, the car is going to leave at 4 o'clock to go to the gym. And so he'll go get his stuff. It's not like he doesn't want to go to the gym. He just would rather watch TV and relax, like most of us would. But at some point, he needs to get some exercise, you know, and to deal with any kind of issues, to help even with mental health. Exercise is wonderful. So his world in regards to what you're talking about is much, much smaller in that regard. His is basically his basic needs, as opposed to, you know, more time on tests and things like that, that you're fortunately, your son
concerned with. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but the thing about, you know, and I think that's very important. I actually started working, taking waiver trainings where you learn to work with disabled adults. And one of the most important things is that they do have the right to say no, and like the right to do what they want to do, and the right for me to be like making sure that they have access to what they love. That was not how it was
Yeah,
years ago. You know, it's like it's very different, and I could get in severe trouble, like just for saying, if the guy says, hey, I want to go and go to the video store today, you know, and I know this guy has no money and he's going to get upset and it's going to be a huge thing. And so I'm like, you know what, buddy, you're broke, so let's just stay here. Oh, I want to go. Well, I think we should stay here, and I don't take him. Then I can get written up for that because I am infringing on his civil liberties. So it's definitely a different kind of like lens that we're looking through. But on both sides, I think, you know, it's very important. Like you said, you know, it's hard because you're like, this kid, my son, this man needs to exercise at some point. But if he doesn't want to, I mean, I don't exercise.
Yeah,
Ever.
exactly.
I'm like, do you want to go to the gym, Jen? No, it'll never. Well, you know, but it needs to get exercise. Like, no, then, you know, then people have to get more creative, maybe, to get him moving, to do other things like helping with groceries or giving him other tasks. But it's important for the ability that he can say no, because there was a time like when he couldn't, you know.
Right. Exactly.
So
yeah,
that's definitely hopefully gotten better, because I know from the worker side,
it has. Yeah,
we really
I
have to
believe
watch
it's gotten
ourselves.
better.
Yeah.
In that regard.
What do you think, Jill?
I think a lot of resources are just very, very expensive. And this goes with just about both any disability or just about anything medical or mental in that sense. Like, if you don't have insurance, you're kind of screwed either way. This I think the issue is quite big and expands way past just autism in general, because um I'm trying to take and put my words together. It's sorry. But if we were to stick with autism right now, I don't really know many resources for adults specifically. But I also, yeah, this is I am, so I don't really know many resources legally for adults in specifically. I'm going to talk about in general, because obviously each state has different laws and very complicated legal matters.
Mhm.
I don't know. This is it is also can be sometimes on a case by case basis. Like, as for your son, you take and you talk about how basically for him to be happy, he needs his specific needs met.
Yeah.
And then for Jennifer's son, she's talking about how he needs his basic needs met. He wants to go join the workforce to take and be productive, and to feel fulfilled. Sometimes you do need to feel like you're contributing, and to put it bluntly, your sons have very different needs and very different access to those needs, and what
Right.
it's just very complicated, and it's a very interesting thing to think about.
I hear your mother.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. All right. That was a great answer, very thoughtful answer. All right, Corey.
I've got to say, she's very insightful for a 17-year-old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. This I as part of my last job, I just felt very, very strongly about, so even if it's very interesting because I definitely phrasing things differently works. Or even giving somebody time in advance to prepare so they mentally knew.
Mhm.
I worked with somebody who was nonverbal, but he could communicate through a variety of other different ways, through his iPad, through pictures with words on them. And all he really needed to know was in advance, like, what is his day going to look like?
An agenda,
Um,
right.
yeah, and then once we got in the routine, he and I, we could mix it up and make it different, if we wanted to. But one of the things that I was going to mention was that one of the things I needed to do was get them ready in the morning, which included helping them bathe. So I spend a lot of time talking about consent and like to understand what that means, and like to make sure that they knew, like, if somebody does something wrong, to figure out some way for them to let us know, even if it's me. If it's me, and you know, you have to tell somebody. Yes, that was my soapbox for the day. I feel like it's gotten better. There's still a lot to go. You know, for people who are able and want to get married, then one of them might lose their benefits if they make too much money. I don't know. There's just so many rules. Jillian.
That happened to my parents. Um, they're both disabled and lost around like $300 because they took and wanted to get married.
Yeah, let's, like I said, civil liberties and laws, I think really, it is, like you said, it's so complicated because everybody's so different. But we definitely need to work. Oh God, we could spend forever just talking about, you know,
Yeah.
the government, the way the government approaches this here in the US. We're gonna move on because we've been talking a really long time. You know, I think, Linda, you're probably gonna have like the first place for like the longest interview we've ever given, which is cool because I'm having fun. We'll see if people actually make it. If you make it to this point in the interview and you're listening, just put a heart in the comments so I know that we weren't the only ones who enjoyed this. Okay, last thing, we're gonna make this quick, and then Jillian's question. Thank you for listening, Corey. There's a heart. Okay, advocating for autism in the autistic community. Better, great, seesaw. What do we think, Linda?
Definitely improved over the years. Definitely from my time to what's going on now. Yes, I'm very impressed with how there's so many. Well, even just having the internet to access so many different people, and you know, just me telling my story. I feel I'm advocating for Lee and for so many others. So yes, I definitely feel that that's improved.
Drop. Jillian, what do you think?
I do not know if this is just my algorithm, because it very well could have, but at least in like the last year and a half, I have definitely seen a lot of autistic creators talk about their autism. And to me, that is very important. It is very important to have neurotypical supporters or that do their best to help out and talk for people who like you for your son. You advocated for your son. That is, but it is also very, very important to me that you hear autistic voices. And the reason for this in particular is, in my opinion, it'll help keep from something like Autism Speaks from happening again. Do you know about Autism Speaks?
No, I know about the organization, but I don't know what happened. There's yes, I don't know. I'm not
Yeah,
aware.
they have quite a dark history, to say
Long.
the least. Yeah,
Oh,
they took and funded electrotherapy for autistic people, which basically was the equivalent to like they were shocking kids without telling them any real reason why they were, for basically showing signs that they were autistic.
oh,
They funded them. They took, and some of the videos that they posted, the kid was sitting there in the background and the parents talking about how she thought about driving her car off the road with her son in the car. Like, I don't really want to get in too much of it because it is very dark.
Ah,
But I do recommend, if you want to find out a little more about it, you should look into it.
okay.
But the reason why I took and am saying that having autistic creators and people who are speaking that are autistic will keep from could help keep from that happening again is one big reason that no one in the Autism Speaks was autistic.
Oh,
It also provides a more in-depth perspective. You get to hear how it, I don't want to, I guess the best way to put it would be you'd get to hear how it feels to be autistic in the experiences, and the more creators out there, the more variety you'll get from different backgrounds, religions, where they grew up, like religions that they grew up with, and all sorts of other things like that.
okay. Now
Awesome.
I'm learning today for sure.
Okay, Corey.
Thanks, Jillian. You said that all really well. What was the question again?
Education, has it improved?
I also have ADHD. I'm just gonna concentrate on the TikToks. I love learning the little short videos of tips and tricks to do things better and hear directly from people what works for them. Yeah, short and sweet.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I've seen some of them. I didn't, that's not our generation, but Jill shows me some. So
Yeah.
I'm
Quiet you. That's
Yep.
totally urgent.
Totally. I really need to actually get TikToky, but it's hard for me. I just don't feel that's my thing. I'm a little bit too old, but I'll work at it. I'm trying to figure it out. So advocacy, I think that has come a huge long way. Like I had mentioned when my son was diagnosed at 6, there were no autistic advocates. And today there are so many. There's called Academy, AUCADEMY, which is classes you can take that only autistic people give, which is awesome because like you can't get more insightful than that. There are just so many people, autistic people, young people, making these TikToks, just being loud, being heard, having these amazing pages. The Autistic Teacher is a great page. Autisticality is a great page. There's so many really cool pages just from using autistic voices. So I would say that has improved tremendously. And I think as that continues to improve, I'm hopeful that that is the one thing that may drive down the numbers, quicker than anything else we could do. We have 2, 3, well, my son's not here. We'll say 3 autistic people, 4, 2 out of 4 attempted suicide because they felt alone and different, and they had to hide who they were because who they were was unwanted. But now they can listen to all these awesome TikTok videos where, oh my gosh, this person's just like me. They're cool. Look, they have like all these likes. It's okay to be me, and there are all these voices. I think that it is going to be that movement that really changes the world. But I think they're going to need our help because they are like tip tops, 2% of the world. Tip tops, and not every autistic person has access to the internet or their voice can be carried globally. They're really going to need the neurotypical people just to start helping and listening. Start listening. We need to start listening to them, and if we do, I think that those two things together is going to really change the world, so that hopefully, we talk in our 15 years, like we have totally different things to say. I think if we are, it is going to be that movement that created that change. So, all right. That was awesome talking. All right, Jillian, last question, and we'll wrap this up.
Good. We get to end this on a positive note. What was one of the greatest what was one of the greatest accomplishments your son made?
The greatest accomplishment that I see, the silver lining behind everything that we dealt with through the years, is the type of the type of men that his brothers are, how much his brothers learned from his experience growing up, how they were so helpful to Lee all through the years, and understanding and being able to laugh instead of cry, which I talk a lot about. Um, just even in the community where we live, how much of an impact he had on the people that I know. How to know Lee and to know our family, so many of my son's friends that they would bring to the house, how much they learned from Lee in order to be more compassionate in their lives. I just feel that his disability, as hard as it was, and how much we have dealt with it and are still dealing with it, and how much Lee has shown us how to be the best that we could be, for him to be the best that he could be. So his greatest accomplishment is his impact on the world around him. I truly believe that.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's a reflection of his parents too.
I believe so. Yeah, it's team effort, right?
Yeah.
Everybody here has strong parent-child, relationships to support them. Well, Linda, it has been awesome talking to you. As I said, wow, thank you for taking the time, a lot of time to talk to us.
Thank you.
I'll always remember this chat that we had. It
Thank
definitely
you.
helped me change how I think about some things, and it's just been awesome to talk to all four of you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
so
time.
much.
And we will see you at the audience. Remember, put a
Okay.
heart at the comment if
Okay.
you actually made it.
Okay.
Next time.
I'm learning how to do this.
Okay. Thank you.